So I would say that the biggest secret to a lot of health and wellness is face exercises. I'm 33, almost 34. And, I've been a lifelong smoker, and I can definitively say the number one reason I look as good as I do or I feel as good as I do is the level of face exercises I do. I do about 2 hours, a 2 hour session, maybe 3 to 4 times a month, so once a week. And the level of difference it has provided has been enormous. I can say that I first discovered it in when I was in the Philippines. And so at the time I was, 31, and I was getting up there in age, and I really didn't like how puffy my face looked. And my eyes were sore from playing video games so much, so I did some, generic eye exercises, moving my eyes around, and it vastly improved the look of my eyes in the mirror. And that's when I said, okay, I'm on to something. And from there, I, the following summer, really, worked out and did a bunch of face exercises and just sort of compared the results, and weird things started to happen. I recall my interaction with women was just completely different, completely different. They wanted to talk to me more. They wanted to spend more time with me, and for me to spend more time with them. And normally I had, I'd always pined for women. I always had to get their attention and run game and run these sort of like different tactics. And seeing the difference was absolutely night and day. And so the type of exercises I'm describing are like, for example, my jaw. Okay. There's no filter, there's nothing. That's actually how sharp it is. I just woke up, so if anything, I'm puffy. My forehead, right? I mean, yeah, my hairline is receding, but you know what I mean? I have a fairly good forehead. My brows, my nose, right? It's fairly pointed, it's angled. My lips are thicker. My ears are more set up high. The back of my head is more built, right? So like it's generally involving a lot of musculature, but there's also some specific massages and routines that I do. But I recall meeting her before the summer and getting her Instagram just in the middle of the street, outside of university, and then afterwards, after the summer, meeting her in a vacation town, and it was a night and day difference, where she went from someone who wouldn't go on a date with me to acting very coy with me. And I realized that's just entirely the only thing that was really different from the beginning and end of summer. Wasn't that I was richer, or I mean, I was a little more built in the body, but the real difference was in the face, through face exercises. And so after that, I said, okay, there's got to be a scientific method to it. There's got to be like a very precise method to it. There's got to be a very certain methodology to these face exercises that will radically alter and shape my face. And so that's exactly what I did. So at the time, I went through, various Instagram shorts. There was a lot of really good like looks maxing routines on Instagram shorts. I don't know where they went. I don't know if they got deleted or what happened to those people. A few people still kind of remain, but it was like, different facial massages and different routines. And a lot of this stuff just didn't work. It didn't have an impact. Then I used AI as well to sort of take pictures and go through the whole process of rating me and like where I was weak and where I wasn't weak, and then just spent a lot of time in front of the mirror. And the difference is, um, once you build the musculature of your face, so like when you do a small routine, like try and lift your cheeks against your fingers, at first it's very difficult. You don't really feel the muscles in your face. It really has no impact. But because there's so many different muscles in our face, it's kind of like the body, in the sense that if you just work it out, it will naturally sit correctly and make the correct alterations. But the difference between the face and the body is that, like, for example, a lot of guys do have like a much stronger right arm versus a weaker left arm, but it isn't that apparent. Where in the face there may be one side that's significantly stronger than the other, and that may be result, for example, like my right eyebrow can't go as high as my left eyebrow. And that's because I had a traumatic brain injury, or a few, that sort of paralyzed that side of the face. You can definitely work with that. And, for example, like one side of my jaw, I tend to chew on more because on one side I have a bad tooth. So that sort of skews my jaw, ironically, to the left because the right is more built. But there are some differences in terms of the musculature of the face versus the body, but you sort of work them out the same. It's sort of the same kind of concept. But anyways, next year I spent a lot of time just sort of working on the routines and figuring out what works and what didn't. And it was just as simple as like taking before and after pictures after a routine, just spending hours. And there was a lot of time thinking of like, does this actually work? Is this an actual routine? Do I get anything out of it? And the big difference was Thailand. Before I went to Thailand, I had a lot of money from crypto, and I sort of didn't I didn't know what to do. And so I just sort of worked on my face and just hung out and had a really good time and partied. But I realized like the world begins to look at you differently. um, People expect more out of you because when you're really good looking, people expect a type of competence. So they expect you to understand people better. They expect you to be more empathetic. They expect you to be nicer. They expect you to be more patient. They expect a lot more out of you when you're better looking than the average person. And yeah, that process is quite difficult because you actually have to become a better person. So like the old me wasn't a very spiritual person, or very connected with humanity, or connected to nature, or really um I mean, I was always empathetic and always trying to find the best solution, but I didn't really become a truly good person in and out. I'm still not, it's always a work in progress, but I didn't really begin to work on that until I got to a certain point to where it's like, oh, the old me is no longer acceptable because people just look at you strange. Like, this person is so good looking. How have they not been raised to be, to this angelic standard? Because the halo effect, we tend to think of it as it's like a projection, but the reality is that projection falls back on you. It's like a two-way mirror in some sense. And so you actually have to be quote unquote more angelic. It's kind of like a strange concept, but if you've rapidly improved your face like I have, you will understand what I'm talking about. I can't say that I have the best face or something, or have like an incredible, or whatever. But I do tend to think I'm better than the average for sure, by a significant margin. And I have a whole rating system that I'll write out, the Vostok facial rating system, which is like sort of a organized compendium of ratings, because people just have like the rating system is not actually scientific. So yeah, but that aside, I do think I'm quite high on that scale, and it's only because of sort of the work and the number of hours I've put into it. But there are other people that I've seen that have, put work into it as well and gotten incredible results. So it does take time. It's no different than exercising the body. You don't just go to the gym and immediately develop muscles. And to be clear, it's not just muscles. There's sort of like also have to sort of drift parts of the face and put pressure on parts of the face and sort of adjust it. But after coming back from Thailand, I tried to market Vostok, and that didn't really work because people just didn't understand what I was talking about. Like, the concept of what I'm describing is it's like it's a new type of technology almost. You know what I mean? Like a microwave. Like, you can just put food in here and it'll heat up. Like, but just why not use a fire? You know what I mean? It's like, why not just continue to have surgeries and do Botox and stuff? And if you want radical and quick changes, then that's the way to go. But honestly, the Vostok system, I think everyone just needs to do it. Even um, 30 hours a year would radically change people in a very shocking and surprising way, I think. And so my whole thing is, if society begins, because everyone's kind of chopped nowadays. Um, you look at like the Supergirl actress, she's just got a flat face. Zendaya, yeah, kind of round, cutish face, but these women are chopped, and not to mention the men are also becoming kind of chopped. And that's just a result of how society ages our face, right? And in general, aging metrics. So, for example, like if you live in a very stuffy environment, if you live, let's say, with a cat or a dog, and you don't, brush their hair off and vacuum a lot, your nose will tend to become bulbous. The tip of it will be get like sort of wider as you begin to inhale more hair and more dust and particles as your nose tries to filter it, right? Gravity over time will make your eyes droopy and your cheeks droopy and will give you that sort of sag. If you don't properly chew your food with your tongue, as we generally don't, you'll get, sort of a turkey neck. Your neck will sort of begin to sag. A lot of these things are unavoidable with age, but you can regress quite a bit of work. Like if you look at, obese people, they tend to have a lot of flab on the back of their arm, and that's sort of what happens to the face. But as well, also we stare down at a screen all day on our phone, right? So that cranks our neck and then creates muscle imbalances, so our head won't sit correctly on our neck. Um, we don't, generally, since we're on our phone, we don't talk as much, so we don't even vocalize and work out the neck and the tongue as much, which creates issues. Our eyes stare at a screen all day, so like we're used to being close sighted and not far sighted, and so our eyes, our actual eye musculature gets weaker, right? People tend to get stressed, like, and so they tend to wrinkle their brow and keep a lot of tension here without breaking that down, and that creates a lot of issues. So there's all kinds of things that sort of work against us consistently, like constantly, really. And the Vostok system is the first and really only scientific approach against things that tend to age us. And it's a system designed to sort of get you your natural beauty back. I know it works because I've seen it work with multiple people, and it's something that I do myself. Just yesterday, I did the eye routine for like 2 hours just to keep my eyes focused. And over time, like I said, I've gotten more humble about it. Like at first, when I got way better looking, and cashiers would process me slower through the line, it sort of gets to your head, and then eventually it's like, okay, whatever, it just doesn't matter. You know what I mean? But definitely some of the weirder things, for example, are like when you get better looking, you can't just date anyone. It doesn't work like that because dating has to be within a level of equality. So I've been single for a while, and I will probably continue to be single because it's difficult to find someone on my level, right? The other thing is, yeah, like around cashiers or clerks, like they tend to either process you longer or they give you special treatment, or people just they tend to give you special preference, and they expect you to understand, like, oh, you're better looking than the average person, so um I'm gonna treat you differently. People just give you a whole, like, they throw you more curveballs in terms of social tests, but they expect you to understand it and get it like that, which I definitely do, but it takes time to process these things. And it's also like kind of like a molding thing. Like, so, like, no different than a cicada that sort of molds and gets out of its old shell. That's what you have to do consistently as you get better looking, because you just can't. People just look at you strangely, and they don't treat you well if you act like an 8 out of 10 when you're a 10 out of 10. You see what I'm saying? It doesn't really work like that. But anyways, um, I definitely recommend trying the Vostok facial system, the Vostok method. There's a few exercises you can try on my site. Just sort of feel it out, see if things feel better, how they work. And you can also do your own research. But like I said, I've compiled everything over the course of several years into a pretty astute method, I think. So, yeah.